Okay, good morning, everyone. I wanted to record a video for you all because I'm not sure what my availability is going to be on Friday. Also, Ms. Stevens' availability might be set up to where she might have to have a substitute. So probably the best bet is to make sure that I have a video for instruction for you, so you can go through it and kind of get all the checkpoints, and then if I am available, I'll try to pop in with the Zoom call, just to try to make myself available. But do remember, if I can't get in on the Zoom, you definitely have the option of just messaging me through remind.com, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. I mean, I will be at my high school, and I could be in meetings and everything. So just if you need to, just shoot me a message, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you have any questions about the assignment itself, but what we're actually going to get into is a term called local variables. Now, we have used variables already, but most of the variables, like, we haven't made the distinction between what is a global variable and what is a local variable. We have been using local variables already. We just haven't really talked about that distinction yet. I think I might have said like local variable or global variable a few times, and nobody ever asked me the question of really what that means. But now we're specifically going to go into it and kind of make that distinction so you understand the difference. But as you know, um, anything that we have as far as like presenting a value and giving it a name, that is what's actually called the variable. So like this line right here, age equals 42. This is where we're actually assigning the value, the integer value of 42 to this variable of age, right? And then we further use it in a conditional statement where we're saying, so if age is greater than or equal to 18, then in this conditional statement, it's going to give you a Boolean result of, like, if the value is 42, it'll give the Boolean result of true. So then this label will actually be printed in the canvas, and would actually work in such that way. But so now, I mean, we've been using variables. You know what a variable is. Now we're going to start making that distinction of global versus local variables. Now, a global variable is something that is defined for your whole script or your whole program, and we have a tendency to not want to use them as much, because the problem with global variables is anytime you possibly manipulate them, you don't want to you don't want to have to try to keep track of what's actually happening with that global variable. It's a lot easier to use local variables within your given functions and everything. So you want to try to use global variables very minimally. Now, if there's some value that you want set for the whole program, there's no problem in actually using that global variable. You just don't want to have to constantly use global variables because of the actual possibility of accidentally manipulating them and causing something to happen for that variable itself to where it gets messed up and has junk inside it instead of the value that you actually want them. And that's where it talks about here, saying that we want to use them sparingly. So for this checkpoint, basically say global should be used as little as possible, right? Just that's what that term sparingly means. We only want to use them as as needed, by just kind of using everything as a global variable, right? So select that. Uh, Make sure that you select your global. Actually, let me set this. Okay. So make sure we put the globals should be used as little as possible. Submit that, and that should give you your clearance for checkpoint 1. So global should be used as little as possible or sparingly, right? So now we'll talk about our function parameters. So anytime that we actually set up a function, and we actually have those values that are in the parentheses right afterward. We call them parameters, but they also are what's termed as local variables. And in other words, they are variables that are used within that function itself. Like they don't get used outside of the function. So sometimes you'll see an error where it says, oh, well, this value hasn't been established yet. And it's because you might be trying to call up a local variable outside of that function, and it's saying that like you can't use that because it hasn't actually been defined, which would make sense if it's a local variable and then you're trying to use it outside of that function. It doesn't necessarily have a definition to that value because it can only be used within that function itself or locally within that function. So so looking at this on mouse press x and y, those two parameters x and y, those are local variables for the on mouse press function itself. Sometimes you just call them locals. They are our parameters, but all parameters are local parameters for a given function. So, looking right here, which of the following is true? Function parameters are locals, not globals. So we will select that, submit that, and there you go. Way to go. Okay. So now we want to try to make a distinction of like given local variables that are called helper variables, and they term them as helper variables within CMU CS Academy to basically say these are local variables that we define to use within a function to kind of help us manage and manipulate what's happening within that function itself. So if we look at this set of code right here, we have the on mouse press, the mouse x and mouse y. These are the two parameters that are actually local variables that are established for this function right here. But then we add a new variable of this color, because what we're actually doing is, depending on where we're actually pressing the mouse, it's actually going to establish a given color, and then that is going to be the color of the circle that gets made. So like if we look at here in the code and we're pushing, you'll notice that the navy ones are on the right, the gold ones are on the left, and you can see kind of the establishment. And then if anybody knows, those are the two colors of the navy itself, and then even when you talk about crews on a submarine, they're the gold and blue or gold and navy, are the two colors that get established within crews for a submarine as well. But looking at all this code right here, we actually have our two parameters, mouse x, mouse y, that are local variables, and then this color parameter or variable is what's called a helper variable, and it's used within this to just actually kind of help define what's going to actually happen to the circle as we kind of click the mouse around in the canvas here. So it is also a local variable, but it's also called a helper variable to establish a little bit of a further definition to that. Okay, so go down here and actually look. It says in this previous example what variables are global. So if we go back and actually look, so they added a little bit more to the code to where they actually have a counter now too. So they have navy and gold, but we also have a counter in the center that's actually kind of counting the numbers of every click that we do. So if we look at the code, mouse x, mouse y are local variables, but they're also parameters. Color is a local variable, but it is a helper variable. But if we look, this counter that's actually being called down here within the function, even though it's being called within the function, it's established outside of the function up here as a label. So this actually is a global variable that's actually being defined up here. Uh, Counter is a global variable that's being defined. So if we go down here, checkpoint 3, that is counter. Counter is a global variable. Submit that. Next, we'll talk about like what are examples of the local variables. Local variables again are mouse X, mouse Y, and color. All three of those are local variables. And then it says which ones are function parameters, and we can always know this by looking at this where we're defining our function itself, and the ones that are in the parentheses behind it, those are the parameters of that function. So mouse X and mouse Y are your function parameters. And then lastly, we ask like which one is the helper variable, and if we go back up here and looking at that, it's not mouse X and mouse Y because those are actually parameters, but we added this color variable that's right here, this local color variable that actually gets used within here to actually become the border color that we're actually using, and it's also the fill color for the label as we use this function here, and it's established within the function itself, so it is a local variable, but it's also a helper variable. So color is what we're actually looking for. Submit that. So as we go through, I'll go through them real quick again. Checkpoint 1, global should be used as little as possible. Checkpoint 2, function parameters are locals, not globals. Checkpoint 3, in the previous example, which variables are globals? Counter is a global variable. Checkpoint 4, in the previous example, which variables are locals? Local variables are mouse X, mouse Y, and color. Checkpoint 5, in the previous example, which variables are function parameters? That's your mouse X and mouse Y are the function parameters. And then in the previous example, which variables are helper variables, and the helper variable is the color. And then in closing, it basically just kind of talks about using locals versus globals, and it just wanted to establish some rules for you. So use globals as little as possible, and that's just kind of that rule of thumb, to where we don't want to use globals too much. I mean, in like high encoding, like when you have a very large program and you're doing a lot of manipulations and everything, it's very hard to pay attention to see what might be happening to that global, because if you have a lot of given functions that are doing calls all throughout the program and everything, you might accidentally affect the global and not realize it, and then you don't know what's causing a glitch in your program if you have a certain code that accidentally overwrote your global variable and actually changed the value of it. So it's very important to just watch out and pay attention to how you're using globals and how you're using your local variables. Use locals a lot, especially helper variables, which is very true. Using those helper variables, and especially using a good naming convention for your helper variables, so you understand like what local variable you're setting there, so you actually know kind of what value you're actually bringing in and taking and making, like through your conditional statements and everything. It's very important to use a lot of those local variables and actually use good naming conventions for your local helper variables that you're creating. And then do not use a local with the same name as a global, and that's where it could cause a glitch in your programming. It does get confusing, and it really just should be avoided. Even though a lot of times, like if you named it the same, the local variable wouldn't necessarily affect the global variable, but sometimes it does. You just got to be very careful. So just as a general rule of thumb, make sure that you don't actually use the same name for your local variables as your global variables. It's just a good naming convention practice. With that, here in the lessons itself, I'm going to assign it that you just need to earn 2 points. So you can do the 3-pointer if you want, but if you do the 2-pointer, that will be enough, or you can do both of the 1-pointers, and that will cover it. Just like I said, if you do have questions and I'm not available in the Zoom call, definitely reach out to me through remind.com, send me a message, and I will get back to you as soon as I can, because I might be in a staff meeting myself. So just depending on availability, this video will be available to you, and you just can go to different parts of it and everything just to go back, refresh your memory on certain ideas and certain understanding of things. But have a great day, everybody. I hope you had an awesome Halloween or Dia de los Muertos, like we say down in El Paso. But have a great day, and if I don't get to pop in on the Zoom call, have a great Friday, have a great weekend, and I will see you when I get a chance to actually get back into the classroom. Talk to you soon.